Seasons of greetings. So, the holidays are upon us, and that means a lot of things to a lot of people. Typically, it means comfort. That's sort of the general time. It's colder. You want to be indoors where it's warm. It means hot chocolate. It means comfort foods, being around people that make you feel comfortable, and engaging in your favorite media that also adds to the comfort. So, favorite movies, comfort TV shows, comfort games, whatever it is. For me, it's no different. And one of those things, it's been a huge comfort for me over the years during the holiday time, is James Bond. So you've seen the title of this video. We're going to discuss For Your Eyes Only. Let's talk about it. So, for those of you who don't know, this is the 12th James Bond film in the series, and Sir Roger Moore's 5th outing as the character, and it's a good one. It's solid. It's a solid film. Some of you know this already. If you don't, I'm a huge Bond fan. It's one of the things I'd like to get into around the holidays, if I can squeeze it in. Pluto TV makes it easy. Although this year it's being really weird with the movies it's choosing to show. Historically, sometime around 2020, 2021, when I learned that Pluto TV had the James Bond channel, they showed everything up to, so from Dr. No all the way up through to Die Another Day. They didn't show any of the Craig movies, and oddly, they included the non-Eon production Never Say Never Again, which is essentially a remake of the 4th James Bond film, Thunderball. But it was a Sean Connery situation, so you have to include it, I think. So this time, and they took it off they were taking it off the air and putting it back on every so often over the last few years or so. Then last year, I think 2022-ish, they took it off, and it's been off the air for about a year or so, probably. This year, last month, sort of in November, I noticed it was back up. So I don't know if that means it's up from November through to the new year, and then they'll take it off again, or what. So that's one thing. It's like I'm enjoying it while it's back. That's nice. And in fact, when I discovered it was on, I checked to see what was showing, and For Your Eyes Only was the one that was showing. And so that's the one we're talking. That's when I watched that time, that cycle, and that's what we're going to discuss. For Your Eyes Only is a movie that obviously there's it's not rocket science. These movies, there's a formula. Bond is after a device called the ATEC machine. It's obviously important to national security and stuff like that, making sure if it falls in the wrong hands, it could be very dangerous. It means the person who has the control of the ATEC can control weapons of submarines and stuff, and it's not a good look for enemy powers to get a hold of this ATEC. So naturally, 007 has to get involved and discover what's going on with the ATEC. Along the way, he meets an assortment of friends, enemies, allies to help him complete the mission. And that's essentially what's going on. Like most Bond films, this is the same situation. What's unique about this particular film, though, is if you look at the trajectory of the Bond films at this time, it's following up Moonraker, which is the Roger Moore's previous film, which is coming on the heels of the Star Wars success. So they shifted gears. For Your Eyes Only was actually supposed to be the next Bond film after The Spy Who Loved Me, but when Star Wars dropped, it was so successful, Bond producers wanted to capitalize on that success. They switched to Moonraker and gave it a sort of sci-fi space spin. And then what can you do after that? You have to bring Bond back down to Earth. He's been all the way up to at that point, he's been everywhere, all across the planet. He's done all kinds of crazy things, stopped all kinds of crazy villains, and then you take him out to space, which is the most, where can you go after that? If I remember correctly, the movie wasn't critically successful. It was, it obviously made a lot of money, but compared to the outing before it, The Spy Who Loved Me, which is, I think, is probably still Roger Moore's strongest Bond outing of his body of work in the series. Moonraker didn't match up to that. So you have to go back to the bring Bond back to the ground level, to the basics. And For Your Eyes Only was that movie. What I love about the movie is, first of all, it starts off so like serious, like that gun barrel. The way the gun barrel sequence. Every movie begins with 17 to 20-second gun barrel sequence where Bond walks out across the screen, shoots the screen, blood comes down, and then this is going on. So they have various versions of the series. For Your Eyes Only is one that stands out because that music is like it's ridiculously it's 1981. The movie comes out. It feels like it's like edgy. There's like some edge to it, and Bill Conti, the great Bill Conti, who you may know from the Rocky movies. He did the music for the Rocky movies and a lot of other great soundtracks. But Bill Conti comes in and puts some freshness on the traditional sort of Bond sound, and really makes it his own. And it's actually it's a fun score. Like Bill Conti really does a good job. Starting with that gun barrel sequence, it's not a joke. It feels like, oh, this is a serious business. Which, if you watch it in succession, watch Moonraker and then watch this movie, it feels tonally serious. Which is what the gun barrels are great. It's a great thing that a lot of series don't have things like this. Bond is unique in that the gun barrel sequence. I'm glad I'm not the only one that thinks this. Other Bond fans feel similarly. The gun barrel sequence is supposed to set you up for like, this is going to be a fun adventure. It's going to be like high octane action. It's going to be serious, and you're going to have a good time, and you're going to get excited about it. The gun barrel sequence gets you excited about it. That's one that makes you perk up, watch that tech series. So it sets you up. So there's that. The gun barrel sequence is excellent, and then you get into the film. Every Bond film has an opening sequence, which usually most of the time does not have anything to do with the main plot of the film, but sometimes it does. For Your Eyes Only is a case where it doesn't. But what's neat, this is one where the series tries to maintain some degree of continuity with the character of Bond, at least as it's in the films. So there's a theory that floats around, or that had been floating around for years, which I didn't know this until I met one of my friends in high school who thought that each actor playing Bond was like a different person, and like James Bond was a code name, which is an interesting theory. But if you watch the movies, you see that this is the same man. It's the same dude. Daniel Craig is an exception because it's a new universe, like another universe of stuff. It's like Craig is like the Neo Connery, you would say. I think that's a separate case, but from Connery through Pierce Brosnan, that's the same man. So Bond was married at one point. His wife dies, obviously, in a different film, and For Your Eyes Only starts off with Bond visiting the grave of his dead wife. And for those of us who know the series, oh shoot, look at this, it's serious business. And we also know that there's been weird answers around whether or not Bond got revenge from the death of his wife. It looks like he might have, in the following film, but then, it's never really clarified. But this film sort of definitively puts the final nail on the coffin of Blofeld, whose name is not mentioned at this point in time. There's like some lawsuit issues, but fans know who it is. And so that's pretty cool. It starts off really fun, and it's just like a fun sort of throwaway opening sequence. But what's not a throwaway part is the fact that he visits his wife's grave. That's a cool I've always liked that. Like as a someone who knows that, and that's cool that that, and it's across a few different Bonds. That Roger Moore's Bond, at least in two films, his wife was referenced. Two of Roger Moore's films is referenced. So that tells you this is the same dude. So that's pretty cool. I love that about For Eyes Only, and it's a fun um, opening sequence. And then you, of course, right after that, you have the theme song, sung by Sheena Easton, which is a great theme song. It's the only one still to this day of all the Bond films that has the artist who sings the song featured in that sequence. It's kind of neat. And she's lovely. It's all get out. She could have very well been a Bond girl. And it's a good song. So got that check. These are checklists. You got a good opening, great Bond gun barrel sequence, a solid theme song, right, for the film, solid film theme song, great vocalist, and already these are boxes that are checked off. Now you get into the movie. You have this is the first film up to that point that does not feature Bernard Lee as M. If you know, Bernard Lee played the character of M, who's Bond superior from 1962's Dr. No up through to 1979's Moonraker. By 81, Bernard Lee had cancer and passed away shortly before his scenes were being filmed. So they didn't use him, obviously, and there was no replacement for M, the character. So they had the chief of staff, I believe, who is sitting in for M this movie, and which is a cool little detail. I liked that they didn't replace M. There's something about that, like, oh, he's on leave, or maybe he's you don't know specifically in the movie why he's not there, but it's reasonable to assume maybe he got sick, something happened, and then somebody comes in to sort of fill in for him while he's out. That's a nice little sort of office detail that I think is pretty cool. And aside from that, everybody else is the same. You got Moneypenny, you got the Q sequences, which is always great, and then Bond girls galore in this movie. This is a unique one in terms of Bond villains, because it's one of the ones where it's not new in the series, where there's misdirection around who you think is the villain. And Julian Glover, who's a fantastic actor. If you've seen Empire Strikes Back, he's features prominently in Empire Strikes Back, and here he's like the main villain, and he's good. He's not as memorable though as some of the villains like Goldfinger or Silva, 006. I think he's solid, but I think there are a lot more memorable Bond villains in the sort of the pantheon of Bond villains. But it's passable. It works for this movie. There are worse Bond villains than him. The henchman is actually less memorable. I think Eric, he's like a regular dude but he's like super, really good at shooting. He's a good marksman, and he's physically imposing. He gives Bond a run for his money. But again, there are much more memorable henchmen, like Jaws, Odd Job, of course, Xenia Onatopp. There, Mayday. There's many more memorable henchmen and henchwomen that would be you'd call to mind if you were to list them. I don't know if you remember him. If you ask, like, what's your favorite Bond henchman, he's not going to be behind the list. But he's intimidating enough, and he works well for this movie because it's grounded. It's more grounded, and I think tonally it actually works. Let's talk about Bond girls. Lena Havelock, Cara Bouquet. She's lovely, and I think she's good. I had come across articles, reviews about her performance that she wasn't as good, and her voice was weird. But to me, I don't know. It works for me. That's just my personal opinion. I thought she was fine. She was fine, and she's playing a character who's very active. She has agency. Her parents are killed, and then she goes to take revenge. or that's sort of what she's after. That's the goal. She's very, but Bond and other forces keep stopping her, but she's not one. She's not sitting around waiting for stuff to happen. She's taking action, and that's always cool. But again, I don't know that that she's as memorable as a Bond girl. I think her storyline might be memorable in some respects, but again, if you were to go down the list, top 5 Bond girls, I don't think Melina Havelock would be up there. There's a lot other ones that would come up. Pussy Galore is like near the top if she's not if she's not. Tracy, Bond's wife, Tracy Bond, she's definitely up there. Vesper, Casino Royale. If you go down the list, again, Honey Rider, Honey from Dr. No. You could list off others that would probably be higher on the list. But Melina is good in this movie. I think she's a solid Bond girl. You also have BB Doll is an interesting interesting in the sense that this is one film, and you don't see this often in the Bond films either. This is a unique case because Lynn Holly Johnson, who was an Olympic skater, very good during that time in the 80s, she's considerably younger than a lot of the other Bond girls up to that point, and she plays a character who is really forward, we'll say, and she's coming on to Bond. And, at this point, Bond is noticeably much older than her, and she's just not, she doesn't care. And it's interesting to see that dynamic because it's like, Bond has to, this is one of a few instances where Bond has to sort of keep a distance or keep this girl off of him because she's really, but it's a fun dynamic. You don't see it often. And I think it's played fun. And Roger Moore is having fun with it. You can tell he's having a ball. This is the other thing about this movie is that yes, tonally overall, it's a decidedly more serious Bond affair than Moonraker or something else. There is a level of, but the humor is still there, particularly with how Roger Moore plays it. Roger Moore, I think, has been known, and this is not sort of a secret. It's not really opinion. This is, if you watch the films, you see that Roger Moore is like the funny Bond. He has a more comedic approach to the film, and that's present in this one too. Even though it's tonally a little bit more serious than his previous effort, but there are elements of sort of like visual gags and different things that sort of Roger Moore puts out that makes it clear that he's not shying away from the humor, and the filmmakers aren't shying away from the humor either. They're still sort of allowing that piece to come through, even though the movie is not, it's not a funny movie per se. But I think that part of the fun is that you do have to have a little bit of humor in it, and with Roger Moore, you're not going to get anything less. At the end of the day, this is. Again, I don't think you'll find this one high, the movie as a whole. You won't find it high on like top Bond film lists, but it's memorable because of its tonal shift. The series has highs and lows with how it approaches tone, and it's the same thing with after something like the sixth Bond film, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. This was the George Lazenby film, which was much more, it was grounded. After You Only Live Twice, Connery's last sort of consecutive film, it got really bombastic. It reached a peak in the approach, where the next thing was Back to the Basics, although that was the next film to do too, but they approached it very much faithful to the novel. And then after that, they brought Connery back, and that was a funnier film than what Connery's sort of trajectory had been up to that point. And then Roger Moore came in, and then they were more or less, they were lighter in tone because Moore was the Bond. And then once they get like too wacky, you got to bring it down to the the seriousness. They did the same thing with After Die Another Day. Pierce Brosnan's last film reached this sort of peak, and to some people it's a campier Bond film, After that, what do? You got to. They didn't know where to go, so they rebooted it. You cast Daniel Craig, and that also is a faithful adaptation to the text. Casino Royale, very good book, very good movie. That's another one I'm going to talk about at some point. But For Your Eyes Only, again, faithful to the book, spiritually, but then obviously because the film has to allow Roger Moore to play to his strengths too as a Bond. Yes, he's still charming. Yes, he's got the juice, but part of Roger Moore's charm is him leaning into the more humorous elements of it, and I think that coupled with how the humor doesn't overshadow the tone, it's actually not a bad mix. But again, you won't find For Your Eyes Only high on like what's the top 5 best Bond movies, but you might find it on on best Roger Moore movies though. Like it's probably going to be like, if you think, maybe number 2 of his best films, I'd say if you're a Bond fan, check it out because it's fun. Again, the music is great. The music is probably also one of the strongest things about this movie. It feels like Bond, even though it doesn't. Like there's sometimes when new composers come in, it can be hit or miss depending on who the composer is. I always think that the winning scores are the ones that, even if people who are not John Barry, they come in and recognize that they're composing music for a Bond film and lean into the sounds that make Bond. What's cool about this one, there's not a ton. There's they got some brass and the strings and stuff like what you would hear in John Barry's stuff, but the feel of it is very different. It's very 80s, early 80s. You got some like clear 80s sounds, but also it's like you feel a lot of horns. It's jazzy. It's got some energy to it. Bill Conti, I think, did an amazing job with the score. So yeah, that's all I have to say about this movie. If you know it, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. I'm always down to talk Bond, like always. So definitely let me know what you think if you've seen this movie. And if you haven't, I would recommend it. It's not bad. It's definitely one of Roger Moore's better Bond films. So check it out. All right, that's going to be it. I'll be back really soon. We've got some fun stuff coming up. Return of the Maestro is coming back pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that, along with some other reviews and more conversation pieces to talk about. So stay tuned. In the meantime, take it easy, and I'll see you in the next video.